Did your parents guilt trip you throughout your childhood? Are they still trying to do this today? Well, let's examine the impact of this on today's Ask a Shrink. Now, guilt is a healthy human emotion for a reason. When we've done something wrong, when we have committed an act we're not proud of, notice the emphasis is on we. When we've done that, then it's appropriate to have guilt. It simply means you have a conscience. You're human. But when this emotion is taken and manipulated against you, when your parents are intentionally trying to make you feel guilt because it's a way to manipulate or control you, then that's a whole different ballgame. That's inappropriate guilt. And some parents do this for a lifetime. They're always trying to control their children through guilting them. And this is never going to end well. The reason it doesn't end well is because the parents are trying to use shame or blame to get their child to do what they want. That child is either going to rebel against the parents, which means it doesn't end well, or they're not going to rebel and internalize this feeling as though they really have done something wrong. They're worthless. They hate themselves. There's something wrong with me, which is something not ending well either. So either way, it's a bad thing. And we need to be aware of having parents who have purposely tried to use guilt as a tool against us. Now, the way we cause our own guilt for ourselves are doing things such as being mean to animals, stealing from somebody, cheating on a test in school. You may have some appropriate guilt about that. But if you're having low self-esteem, self-hatred, not being able to find your path in life because you feel so overburdened by this guilt that's been heaped on you in an inappropriate way from your parents, then that's very sad and we need to look at that. So maybe you're not sure if one or both of your parents is using parental guilt against you. Well, think about it from the notion of, does it seem to be a cycle in your household growing up? As a way to get her way, does your mother, let's say, become openly hostile with you? Very passive aggressive, complains and complains until she gets her way and breaks you down. If you're a little kid, let's say age 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you're not going to be able to hold your own against that. That's going to be very confusing. Basically, the problem is with the parent who's doing it, of course, because they're not able to actually authentically express their feelings. So if a parent can't talk about and admit to a family dynamic that they have a fear of losing their place of importance within the family, I don't feel I'm going to be loved. I'm going to miss you if you move away. I feel lost without you, dear son or daughter. I'm afraid that you're going to grow up and leave me. I'm going to be left here in this little town all by myself. So I'm going to guilt trip you to get you to stay. Now, if a parent is honest with themselves, these are some of the underlying feelings which may be churning there. But the parent is going to have to realize that in the first place, what's going on within them so that they can pull back from the parental guilt tripping. It's really about them and their loss of control. They don't feel like they're valuable or people are really going to listen to them or take their needs seriously. But as a child, even an adult child, you don't need to figure that out. That's up to the parent to figure out. What you need to do is realize that you need to have healthy boundaries with a parent who is using these passive-aggressive techniques with you in terms of the blaming or the shaming, always tying you and pulling you into what's wrong with the family. The child at some point hopefully will figure this out and set up some very strong boundaries with this very toxic parent or parents. An example could be something with an adult child of theirs moving away, and it makes them feel scared and vulnerable instead of supporting the child on his journey as he or she finds their wings in the world. So rather than deal with the insecurity in them, they guilt the child. Why are you moving so far away? What if something happens to me? Was I that bad of a mother? Was I that bad of a father? You must really hate me to move 2,000 miles away after all I've done for you. Your brothers and sisters need you here. How are we going to survive without you? Instead of simply getting in touch with their feelings and saying something like, you know what, I'm really going to miss you. I love you a lot. I'm going to feel an emptiness without you being in the home. Notice how a parent just simply stating their authentic feelings like this is very different from heaping on blame or shame to get them to stay. Basically, guilt tripping is a way to get the child to take responsibility for the parent's feelings, and that's always going to be a big no-no. A child is in no way responsible for their parents' feelings. When I mentioned earlier there's a cycle to it, it's when a child begins to catch this and then they give in to this parental manipulation. They know that they're being guilt tripped. Then they beat themselves up perhaps for giving in. Then the cycle is, I don't think I can ever get out of this, and on it goes. A child over time will naturally develop some resentment towards a parent like that, begin somehow lashing out, acting out somehow, trying to set boundaries, but do they stick with the boundaries? And then if they find they can't stick with the boundaries, this is what may lead to no contact. Sometimes parents ask a therapist like myself, why would my kid not want to talk to me? I just don't get it. I gave them everything I had. I was the best mother or father I could be. Well, when they've been guilt tripped for many, many years and they're struggling with how to deal with it, with you, the toxic parent, they don't know how to handle you. That's why they want to go no contact. So it actually falls back on the parents, but the parents often don't want to discuss or disclose this or look at this in an honest way. So if you're a child now working with this, begin being transparent with your parents and sharing your feelings about how it feels to be guilt tripped by your own parent. Make a note, journal, even document how you have been being mistreated in this way. Keep track. Sometimes you may do a behavior because it just seems easier than feeling the guilt. So you know what, I'm just going to call my father today even though I don't really want to. He's guilted me into it. So sometimes you may catch yourself giving into the guilt, but this is where you need to really begin setting up those firm, healthy boundaries. And then tolerating the uncomfortable feeling that comes with feeling the guilt. It's just a feeling after all, right? We think guilt is somehow going to just come in and decimate us. We're going to almost die somehow with this feeling. And really, it's just simply a feeling. We need to work with that feeling in terms of simply tolerating it. It's not going to kill you. An adult child could be willing to, let's say, go home for Christmas. The parent is trying to guilt them into doing so. How can you ignore us on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day? But you don't want to. Perhaps you have your own family. You've started a new life, a healthier life. So communicate that to your parents. I'm willing to come home for Christmas, but not if you guilt trip me. I'll let you know when I make up my mind. I'm undecided right now. That's the boundary. Now, if your parents ignore the boundary and start guilt tripping to just make sure that you do come home for Christmas, and as a healthy adult, you're going to have to honor your boundary, not go home for Christmas. Continue with your own life where you're headed in your life and feel that uncomfortable feeling of the childhood brainwashing that somehow you're really doing something wrong when of course you're not. It's the toxic conditioning, i.e. brainwashing. The more you tolerate it, it'll begin to dissolve on its own and won't have the power over you that began back in early childhood. So I hope this is helpful for some of you who have dealt with parental guilt trips in your life. A lot of parents use guilt as a way to manipulate and put a child on a puppet string. So you need to stop that in your adult life. Please leave me some comments below if you've been controlled in this manner in your life. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.